So turning on multi-factor authentication is one way to do it through the users, right? So we can either go to an individual user or select all users and say we want to enable multi-factor authentication for those people. Another way to do it is to have what's called conditional access. If we scroll down to the security settings of our Active Directory, there is a conditional access setting. And conditional access is basically a policy that you can set that will turn on multi-factor authentication only under specific circumstances. So instead of it being dependent on the user, yes or no, true or false, it's dependent on a combination of circumstances. Now there's a baseline policy here that we can see that basically says require multi-factor authentication for high-level roles. And so that policy, if you turned on conditional access, basically requires multi-factor authentication for global administrators, SharePoint administrators, Exchange administrators, conditional access administrators, and security administrators. These are powerful roles within your Active Directory and within your applications. And so automatically enabling this policy for those individuals makes a certain amount of sense. And we can see that we can actually use policy immediately, which means that these people would have to set up multi-factor authentication, or enable in the future, which means as we add administrators into our account, that's going to get enabled, or we can just say we do not want to use this policy, but there's a big orange exclamation mark saying this means your admins are vulnerable. So I'm going to leave the setting that it was automatically. We can go and create another policy. So this is called using access outside the office, okay, as an example. So we can say that we want to affect all users, okay, all apps, and the condition being that the location is not one of your trusted locations. So we want to turn on MFA for any location, but we will exclude what's called a trusted location. And that means we can configure a trusted location as in another area within MFA here, okay? So any access outside the office, if I was to enable this policy, this is the condition, but we can say grant access and require multi-factor authentication. So we can basically allow people to log in from outside the office, but require multi-factor authentication. Of course, you can just deny access. So people must be in a trusted location within that's basically their IP address and what network they're connected to. You could block that, or you could say, well, you know what, that's a little bit of a more suspicious, and we have to be a bit more careful with people logging in outside the office. So Microsoft Azure allows you to enable conditional access that only turns on multi-factor authentication in certain circumstances. Now, if we go back to the conditions, we can see that it's not just locations, it's the devices that they use, it's the apps, the state of the device, whether this is more of the sign-in risk is a machine learning type algorithm that will basically classify somebody's login as being high, medium, low, or no risk. And so let's say we want people who are outside the office and medium and high risk to have to use multi-factor authentication. And so there's a machine learning component that Microsoft will assign a risk factor. That could be the person's logging in from areas that have never seen anyone log in before, far distant locations away from your office, etc. Okay. So if we turn this policy on, this will basically enable multi-factor authentication in certain circumstances. So we can remember we said about trusted locations. Certainly we can add a location. For instance, this is home office, and mark as a trusted location, and we can say that this IP address, we can use a range here, so /24, is a trusted location, and I'm going to call that home office, right? Now I've got a trusted location, so when my conditional access policy says multi-factor authentication is required except if it's in a trusted location, now I have a trusted location. So this definitely is a lot of flexibility in setting up multi-factor authentication only in specific cases.